I'm Rebecca Marion, and today I'm going to be presenting on problem 17, Popsicle Chain reaction. So, the problem formulation says that wooden popsicle sticks can be joined together by slightly bending each of them so they interlock with a so-called covalent exchange. When one of these chains has one of its ends released, the sticks rapidly dislodge and a wave front travels along the chain. It then asks us to investigate this phenomenon. So, I will start with the basic basis of the phenomenon, going on to a theoretical model, experiments and results, and then, instead of measuring system parameters, delve into the phenomenon, and finish up with some conclusions. So, some initial observations. We can see that depending on which side of the chain you release, you get two different phenomena. One wavefront and one spring. So what's actually going on here? Let's first look at what happens when you release the red stick. When you release the red stick, the green stick will be expelled upwards, since it was previously deformed. When it's expelled upwards, the orange stick can also be released, and thus the next green one, creating the spray we saw. So, what happens when the blue stick is released? When the blue stick is released, the orange stick will bend in this direction, thus lifting the next green stick. As a result, the rest of the mesh is lifted and the sticks are expelled in a downwards direction, creating a pulse. This is closest to the waveform described in the problem formulation, and is thus what this assignment will focus on. Okay, so in terms of energy conversion, first we have elastic potential energy stored in the program. When the weave starts to become lifted, this is partly converted into kinetic energy and then into gravitational potential energy. It's important to note here that this is from the perspective of the wavefront. The sticks, for example, will have kinetic energy here as well. Another way of viewing this is that, or something that's important to note, is that in the middle of the chain, we will have a steady state with constant height and velocity. This is because you reach a balance between the energy input, namely the elastic energy of the sticks, and the energy output, namely the kinetic energy of the sticks being expelled. Okay, so the relevant parameters are the pattern of the weave, or the angle between the sticks, the dimension of the sticks, the material of the sticks, and especially Young's modulus, the side of the release, as we have showed, and the type of ground, and then especially, perhaps, the coefficient of friction. Let's go into a theoretical model. So the key here is that the sticks can at most retain their own elastic energy. So if we want to model the wavefront, then we need to consider the elastic energy containing one stick. We can approximate one stick as a beam with 4-point supports, and then using Olavinova beam theory, we can obtain an expression in terms of material and geometric properties and the region of curvature, which is a measure of local deformation of the sticks. As we have said, the elastic energy is converted into kinetic energy. So on the right side, we have elastic energy, on the left, kinetic energy. So we can rewrite the mass of the sticks in terms of volume and density. We can also rewrite the expression for the velocity. Then, rates of curvature can be expressed in terms of length scale of the problem and how the dimension of the stick scales. Meaning that we attain the following expression for the velocity of sticks, which will be proportional also to the velocity of the pulse. We can do the same thing for the height reached by the sticks, or by the pulse, by rewriting mass, then rates of curvature, and obtaining an expression. So now on to our experiments where we measure system parameters. As we saw, Young's modulus is very important in the system, and is defined as a stress over strain. We can rewrite this in terms of measurable quantities, namely the force deforming it and resulting deformation. Thus, by fastening a popsicle stick in one end and then measuring the force by which is deformed with an electrical dynamic meter, we can create a quick diagram showing these two quantities against each other. Here you can see the results, with the end result being the slope and the force deflection diagram. We can also note that a fitted Euler-Bernoulli model fit the results well, meaning that our approximation works. Then, as you saw, degrees of curvature is also an important part of this problem. The definition of the radius of curvature is that if we look at the local curvature at one point, then the radius of curvature will be the radius of that circle. We measured distance d, as seen here, with a ruler, and then computed the radius of curvature using the 3-point circle equation. Now on to our second set of experiments. So we placed a camera perpendicular along the set axis about 1.5 meters away and built and released 2-meter reeds. This went on 5 times for every set of parameters. We then used tracker to mark the wavefront in every fifth frame, meaning that we have both vertical and horizontal distance. So we measured height by looking at the vertical distance against time. And then you can note here that after a while we reach a constant height. And this is then the steady state, and it's also where the max height of the pulse can be found. Next, we looked at how you can measure velocity. So here you have the same reference point, but instead you graph horizontal distance against time. Here you can see a short acceleration phase followed by steady state, where you have constant velocity. And instead we look at the slope in order to find the velocity of the wave. Next up, the first parameter that we varied was the weave angle. So we varied these for 5 different values, and by creating templates for each angle in order to achieve better results. So first up, here's the result of how the max height of the pulse depends on the weave angle. We can see that there appears to be no clear trend here, which is suggested by theory as the elastic potential energy of C is not dependent on the angle. However, we can also note that it goes downwards towards more extreme angles, which is probably due to technical difficulties with designing the weave for more extreme angles. Next up, we have the impact of the weave angle on the pulse velocity. So here we can see, and a linear regression line is shown. So here we can see that the velocity decreases with an increasing angle. And this is of course because when you increase the angle, then you get small horizontal speed components. And yes. And next up, we vary the length of the popsicle sticks by successively shortening them, resulting in 6 different values. We can also note that we can use our theoretical model to predict this phenomena, but first we need to determine the proportionality constant. In order to do this, we, for determining the pulse height, graph how it should scale in terms of length against the actual data, and can thus solve for the proportionality constant in terms of the slope. And here you can see the result showing our theoretical prediction against the experiments. And you can see that the theory predicted our results. We can then do the same thing for how the pulse velocity should scale. And as you can see here, our theoretical prediction falls within 95% confidence interval of this phenomenon. We also looked at different grounds, since we wanted to investigate how this phenomenon was influenced when you change the grounds on which the program will lay. So we looked at a foam mattress, which is here covered by a piece of cloth. We looked at a wooden table and at a linoleum floor. And we released reefs of length 2 meters where constant weave angle and significant dimensions on all of these different floors. So first up, here you can see our results for the coefficient of friction. We can see here that there appears to be no clear effect of the friction on the max height, neither on the max height of the pulse nor on the pulse velocity. And this is reasonable since the cobra weave does not slide along the floor. The only main interaction it has with the floor is when the first stick bounces against the ground, thereby lifting up the rest of the weave. So from that point forward, it is not significantly affected by it. Okay, so then on to our conclusions. We were able to define from which side we should release the curvature and achieve a stable wavefront. We also studied the perhaps two central characteristics of this wavefront, namely height and velocity, and how they depended on multiple different parameters, such as the wave angle, the stick length, and the ground investigator, where we quantified the coefficient of friction. We were also able to derive, from all the knowledge beam theory, we were also able to derive a theoretical model, which we compared to the results. So, in our parameter investigation, we saw that when you increase the angle in the beam, the height is mainly unaffected, as predicted by theory. We also saw that pulse velocity decreases, which was due to there being smaller horizontal speed components. Then we tried varying the length of the sticks, and we saw that the height decrease as being proportional to 1 divided by the length of the sticks to the power of 4. We also saw that the velocity decrease, as v being proportional to 1 divided by L squared. And these results are then shown here. And we also saw that the coefficient of friction did not have a significant impact on neither the pulse velocity or on the height of the curve. And some of our illustrations are then arranged from these two sources. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your report. Clarifying questions from the opponents.
So the first question is about, you had the formula of the energy, which was Euler-Bernoulli beam theory. So what were the main assumptions and why was it good for your theory?
Okay, so the main assumptions of Euler-Bernoulli beam theory is that you have small deformations and that basically that you have no shear force. And as you perhaps saw, I had a graph showing the force against the deflection.
Yes.
And the largest deflection we could see there was 5 centimeters, which is large compared to the length.
Okay.
And there we showed that the deformations were small enough.
Thank you. Can you go to slide number 15? And there was the force graph. And can you tell us where the error bars come from in the force graph? Right there, right graph.
Do you mean this one?
Yes. How do you calculate the error bars?
Yes, okay, so what was done here was that we repeated, for every force, we repeated that experiment 5 times.
So it's like mean square deviation?
It's a 95% confidence interval.
Okay, then slide number 19, please. And you have kind of a jump between the steady height and the height before. Why do you have this kind of distance between them? Right here.
Yes. Okay, so I think that might be in some part that might have to do with how it tracks, since we only track every 5th frame. So
Okay.
in some cases, when there's a large development of the wavefront,
Can you tell me about the assembly of chain? How did you assemble so that the angles were same?
Okay, so we used a computer program to print templates for each angle, and then we laid these under the beam so that we could make sure it was the correct
Thank you
angle.
for the questions, and now we have the preparation.
I'm Rekord Zetalov from Team Georgia, and I'll be reporting problem number 17, Popsicle Chain reaction. So, first of all, let's look at the relevant parameters in experiments that we changed. So, Young's modulus of the popsicle, which was maybe most crucial parameter for the popsicles, also the number of popsicles, and popsicle pattern, like angles that he changed. Now, let's move to the general evaluation of the report. We saw qualitative explanation of phenomenon by bending the energy. Then the reporter explained us how we get the maximal height, which was steady after some point, and then we got the velocity that was constant for the experiment. Then she calculated the Young's modulus experimentally and evaluated the angle dependence on pulse height, Also in theory we saw how the maximum height was achieved and how the steady velocity was achieved. And finally, we write the surface, we write the angle, we write the length, but I didn't really see the verification of Young's modulus. Then we have the strength to show effect of releasing stick. So releasing stick was crucial to the phenomenon. If we would get the popsicle chain reaction or the sticks rotating at some height and falling down, so this was quite good, the releasing point of the chain. Then we got the explanation of phenomena geometrically and physically, which was quite good, as I already mentioned. And they evaluated the Euler-Bernoulli beam theory, and in my clarifying questions I thought that it was valid for her theory because she had a force dependence graph, and also the deflection was quite small. And also calculated the Young's modulus experimentally, which had kind of small error because it was theoretical graph compared to the claim. Then the theoretical model, by that I mean that there was no complex formulas. For example, we only got the max height calculated by energy conservation law, but no energy losses, for example, with the air friction, and maybe we'll talk about these parameters later. Also, the lack of the measurement of the numbers. In the graph, in the slide number 26, she got the curve, some kind of a curve with just 4 points, and I don't think that 4 points are quite good to get this complex graph. And also huge difference between error bars. I could see in some graphs like quite big error bars, I could see in some graphs smaller ones, and also in one graph I could see the error bar which was not in the theoretical curve. It was outside of the theoretical curve, and maybe we will talk about it later again. So now let's get to discussion part, and first of all I want to ask the reporter to come here.
First of all, let's thank you for your opposition. And now we move on to discussion in which the reporter can respond to all the critical remarks.
So I couldn't ask this in my clarifying question. What was your releasing mechanism for? What was your releasing mechanism? Like you did it with hand, or you had some kind of releasing mechanism?
Okay, so as shown in the first pictures, we kept the cobra being released by adding sticks, and then in order to release them, we simply pulled those away.
Oh, you just pulled the away the last one, and you released it instead. Can you see it again, please?
Yeah. Thanks. Okay, so here you can see a blue and a red stick.
Yes.
And the curve is released by removing one.
You just removed one
Yes.
of those and released. I think that this is quite good, but I think that if you remove and like put it hand or something right here, and then you release, it would be better, because when you're releasing this, you give some kind of the. I think that these two sticks start some kind of the motion, right? So when you release this and put hand, I think that error will be less for releasing, but I don't think it will be crucial for the phenomenon.
Yeah, that depends entirely on how slowly you remove the sticks. Because I mean, if you remove it disproportionately, so for example, if you tilt it, this part is removed before this one, that would be an error. But if you always hold very quickly, then that and the resulting difference in how quickly you make.
I agree with it. Now, let's move to the Young's modulus versus the chain angle and height. So, when you change...
sorry, what do you mean Young's modulus against change angle?
When you change, so you had the theory, as I remember, you were calculating the Young's modulus of the whole chain. And
the Young's modulus of the single stick.
Of the single stick, and you divided it by density?
No. Okay, so the point of Young's modulus is if you exert a certain force, then how much was plus the material before. So what we did was that we showed the force by which you're trying to deform it against the deflection. So you look at the against deflection or deformation. So the point is that if you have a popsicle stick plant here, and you exert it for a certain force, then you look at this distance. So how much you bend it.
Yes. I'm just asking about the velocity of the wave.
Okay.
You calculated the velocity of the wave with Young's modulus divided by density. Can you show us again how you calculated theoretically the velocity of the chain?
Okay, so I think you're asking about the proportion. Are you asking?
Yes, about the proportion right here. Yes.
Yes.
Velocity is proportional to Young's modulus. Which Young's modulus do you have here?
It's of the sticks.
It's of the sticks. I think that in this measurement, she should have the Young's modulus of the chain. By that I mean that I thought that she assumed the chain as a medium, and she calculated the velocity of the wave in the medium. So if she had the Young's modulus of the whole chain, it would be better closer velocity, right?
Okay, so I'm sorry if this wasn't clear in my presentation, but the point of this formula is that the velocity of the wave will be proportional to the expression for a single stick. Right? Since the whole wave is made up of lots of single sticks.
Yes.
Yes, so if you just look at the single stick and how that moves and behaves, and then you multiply that by proportionality,
So
and then
you
you
don't have like exact formula of the velocity? You just have some kind of proportional on Young's modulus, density, and height and h and l.
Okay, so
Length.
the reason for why this is a proportionality, or perhaps the foremost reason, is that the effective mass of the single stick, and therefore of the wave, is very difficult
Can you
to
define the
identify.
effective mass?
Okay, so when you talk about effective mass, you are essentially talking about mass that is acting on forces. So for example, if you want to look at the ball rolling, then you can't just...
Oh wait, just define the effective mass of the stick.
Okay.
While rolling.
Okay, so the point of effect, okay, so the point here is that the stick moves, the stick doesn't simply move forward, right?
Yes,
The stick
it moves like
this.
this direction.
Yes.
Yes.
And if, for example, you might know that when you look at the effective mass of a rolling ball, then that's going to be different from its resting mass, since you have both this motion and this motion. And the point here is that what the effective mass would be of the cobra bead shape, or the stick is a cobra bead. That's very difficult to define. Yeah. So
Okay.
that is the reason why it's proportionality.
Okay.
Because normally you will have 1 divided by 2 times mass
So
times ft squared.
I get it.
Yeah.
So qualitatively, the explanation of the velocity is quite good, that it's proportional, but that we don't get the quantitative velocity.
Okay, so what do you think
okay.
the effective mass is?
Right now?
Yeah.
The effective
Why
mass
wouldn't
is,
it be a proportionality?
as you define the effective mass is the mass acting on when the stick is bending, the mass that affects another stick is the effective mass, right?
No.
Okay, let's move to another discussion point we have a lot of them. So chain angle. So when you change the angle of the chain, like angle of the two sticks, which parameters were changing?
Okay, so
Like
relative parameters.
experimentally, I want to ask you, did the maximum height of the chain change?
Ah, okay. Now I understand your question. So as you might remember, my graph looked somewhat. If you look at the angle here and the height here, then my graph looked somewhat like this, right?
Yes.
Yes. And
Can you go to this graph, please?
okay, and basically what the reason for this is that the key to this wavefront and the key to, is energy conversion. What
Yes.
you put into your system is elastic energy. And as we saw in my
So
drive
when you
formula,
bend it one stick, like for example, it was between the two sticks. Can I get? Like for example, between the two sticks, in this case was 90 degrees angle, and in this case was 105 degrees angle.
okay,
So-
okay, technically that is the wrong angle. Because between all sticks you have this section, right? And here are sticks. We look at
Yes.
this angle, not at this angle.
Oh, okay. Yes. You changed the bending energy. The bending energy was changing.
No. the bending energy does not change significantly.
Then if the bending energy does not change, the maximum height won't change because you have the maximum height to calculating flight bending energy.
Okay, so if you look at the formula here on the bottom of the slide, you can see that you know that the height of something is proportional to its potential, gravitational potential energy.
Yes.
The gravitational potential energy comes from the elastic energy stored in space.
Yes.
And the angle of the wheel does not factor into the expression for the angle of the wheel. And that's the reason why there's no clear effect. The reason for why it's not simply a straight line, most probably, is that sometimes when you make the angle more extreme,
bending energy changes.
no, you basically, it becomes harder to build a change and to release it. But you do not significantly change the bending energy.
Now let's go to slide number 25. I'll say my opinion about this line. So slide number 25. C1 coefficient right there and K1 coefficient. Can you define it again and what was the physical idea of C1 and K1?
Okay, so yes, I can definitely do that. So what you see here is the pulse height against 1 divided by the length of the station power 4. So basically you look at how the system should scale. And C1 is the slope of this line.
Yes.
And then K1 is defined by this expression in terms of C1. And the reason for why you do this is that you try to turn it from a proportionality into something equal to something else, right? And then you need, and since we don't know the effective mass, you try to determine the coefficient.
Well, let's look at this graph now. It looks like more like the graph which has asymptote than like the line, right? Look at this. It would be better approximation if you had this kind of curve than the line.
I think that's difficult to say, like considering
Yes,
the error
it is
bars.
difficult to say
Because
because you have only 4 points. Like if you had more, I think that you should have more to define the curve. I don't think that defining it as a line is quite good assumption because these 4 points kind of look more like the graph with asymptote. And now, moving to the slide number 20, can you tell me, you were tracking the last point, right? Right here. So which point were you tracking and what was the tracking error of this point?
okay, so
And how did you get, by the way, data?
Okay, so you film the code
Yes.
and then you look at each, then you look at that in Tractor. And what you do in Tractor is that for every fifth frame, you mark that point. And then when you mark that point, you get
How many FPS was your camera, by the way?
sorry?
How many FPS frames per second?
240 is the iPhone 6.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Okay. I think we're out of discussion time, so let's thank the reporter and the opponent for
First of all, I want to say about thank the reporter. We had quite good discussion and we made some points. Of course, I have to say that that she didn't count velocity was quite bad because she had good qualitatively analyzed velocity of the chain. It will depend definitely on Young's modulus and density, but exact formula, we didn't have exact formula. Also, when I look at the graph, when she was tracking, she had error kind of. This thickness was definitely error because she was tracking it, and by the way, she couldn't point at the exact same point of each chain. So I think that in the graph she showed the height versus time, she should have added the error of this thickness or maybe the some kind of the parameter of the length. And also the thing that she said that.
Yes, sorry, we're out of time. Let's thank the opponent once again. Clarifying questions from the viewer of this.
Firstly, I would like to ask, what is the reason why the cobra reaches some steady state and its all elastic energy doesn't just go to like infinity?
yes, so exactly as I explained in my presentation, basically you have a balance between the energy input and energy output. The energy input is elastic energy of the sticks.
Okay,
And the
yeah.
output is the kinetic energy. So when the curve over you start, you get an acceleration phase.
Thank you. What does your comment?
I think that it is mainly about if you look at the phenomenon, this stick is released, it releases second stick, it goes with the second,
Okay,
third,
thank you.
and fourth, and
That was not where I was aiming. Now, give me a physical justification of the fitting parameter k. Why should we expect that there is any?
Why we should, I don't understand your question. So the
Okay.
reason for why it's a proportionality is because we don't know the effective mass.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Nextly, why? Give me a reason. Why is the angle affecting the cobra velocity?
Okay, so as you might, basically you have this section of the cobra,
Yes.
right? And then the angle of it varies. What's this section? Or what's this
Yeah. So
angle?
when we increase it, it gets
Yes, so
compressed.
look, so when we increases this, then basically less of the sticks are pointing in horizontal direction. So just by them being released, you travel a smaller horizontal
Thank you.
distance.
What do you
I
think
agree
about?
with the reporter.
Okay.
And also
next-
change the whole young modulus of the whole stick.
Okay. Thank you.
With the parameter too.
So what were the limits for the cobra to be observed? Like,
Okay, so basically you need it to be long enough to reach this balance between the energy input and energy output.
okay.
About 1 meter to 1.
Okay. Is there any the other limits, for instance, like gravitational force or
That's
so?
it.
Okay. Thank
what-
you.
If it was long enough, you would still get chain reaction, but it would not get to maximal height. And I think that the length of the sticks could change the cobra chain, cobra wave reaction.
Okay. And next one. On the slide 19 and so, you could see the cobra. And so what is a typical error of this curve?
You mean what is the
Because,
error of
because
the
I believe that there is unclear reference point there, so what is the error of this?
Okay, so I think the point here is
Short
that,
answer, please.
okay, so for every set of parameters we gathered 5 points so that you could visualize 95% of
Okay, thank you. I believe we are mostly familiar with the problem statement, so I will move on to the pros and cons of the report. Firstly, in the report we have seen that they were discussing the energy transfer due to Euler-Bernoulli elastic theory, considering themselves gravitational and potential energy. We believe that this is a very good approach, but we were missing the energy dissipation that might have occurred due to either frictional forces, which we would like to see justification of that they are not contained in their theory, and also that there must have been some rotational energies when the sticks are released, because we could see in the demonstrated video that indeed they were rotating. This was not included. Also, that they were on the slide 11 discussing the proportionality on the prediction for velocity. But we believe that this could be improved by the angle, which in my questions was then answered by the referring team. Also, they were discussing different surface frictions, which we believe is good, but that they were using some materials that could be deformed, such as was mattress and so on, and we believe that this was not investigated enough because that could affect the motion of the cobra. They were measuring parameters such as Young's modulus, which we genuinely liked, and that they gave us intuitive explanations of the two modes of operation of the cobra. Nextly, what we disliked about the report was that they were fitting the parameter k, and so we are missing the physical explanation, which might have been due to the rotational energy of the sticks that was not accounted for. They were investigating parameters. Yeah, so about the opponent. He clarified some assumptions of Euler beam theory, which is important to be sure that we can even use it. But they missed the mechanism of the steady state, which was also not discussed in the report. And we believe that this might be due to the energy dissipation and so on. They criticized the theoretical model but did not provide any suggestions for improvement. Ours is including the rotational energies and so on. Nextly, they were inquiring into proportionality constant, but they did not seek any physical justification. What they completely missed also was that they claim the angle changes the Young's modulus of the sticks, which is well, trivially wrong. Also, he focused he could have focused more on the error of the measurement, but which he partially did, but did not arrive at any conclusion also. In the discussion, they were discussing the release mechanism, which we believe is irrelevant because theory concerns itself with the steady state, which is not affected by the release. Then, they were clarifying Young's modulus measurement, which was good but not that relevant. They were discussing some height angle dependence, which we genuinely liked, and they were discussing fitting parameter k in the conclusion, did not reach conclusion, but we believe that this was a great point, should have been brought.
Let's thank the reviewer for the record. Thank you very much. And we now move on to concluding remarks from the reporter, please.
Okay, so for one thing that was brought up was that some of the error bars did not go through the curve bits. It's important to note here, however, that these error bars are only a 95% confidence interval. So it's not unreasonable that the curve bit does not pass through them. I would also like to comment on reviewers' remarks on energy dissipation and especially on the rotational energy of the sticks. If we're modeling, and the point here is that we're only really modeling the phenomena from the cobra shape to the lifting up to it reaching a maximum height. When you have rotational energy, that's when the sticks have been released. But that is effectively outside the wavefront and thus of the problem formulation. So that is not a relevant source of energy dissipation. It was also commented upon that we did not vary the material of the sticks. However, I would like to note that the problem formulation says explicitly that we are supposed to consider wooden particle sticks, which was done in the study. Also, there was some discussion on why the expression for the max height of the pulse and the velocity of the pulse are proportionalities. And I would like to reiterate that we do not know the effective mass, and we do not know exactly which fraction of the original elastic energy is converted into a certain other energy. And thus, in order to properly model the phenomenon, we have to compare it to actual data. So in this study, we were able to attain a stable wavefront and observe a steady state. We also looked at the height and velocity of this wave pulse and how it varied for multiple parameters in the length of stick, weave angle, and the type of ground. And we're also able to derive theoretical expressions and compare them to experiments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from the jury, please? Yes, Les?
Can you show us your formula for the velocity?
Yep.
I think that will be just in a second.
Yeah.
Okay. Eva, please.
Could you explain how did you calculate or estimate the friction coefficient?
Yes. Okay, so it's okay. Okay, so basically, the materials that were used were the grounds that were used were a table and a mattress. And in the case of the table mattress, we simply tilted those, and then looked at the velocity which is slid down it. For the floor, which of course could not be tilted, we attached a weight dynamometer and dragged it and then looked at the peak in the force time diagram.
To the opponent, how would you suggest to calculate this for experimental the young modules for the whole chain?
So,
Start with her.
basically I have to say, so if she kind of glued two chains together with just small layer of the glue, she could get the whole chain and then calculate the Young's modulus as if it was a stick. And as she calculated for stick, she could calculate it for whole chain.
Okay, a short comment from the report, I think you want to add something?
Yeah, I would like to note that that would be probably a different situation since the glue will factor into how it forms.
Yes, but still, I think that the
Okay,
Young's
okay.
modulus.
Yes, no time for discussion, we have other questions. Elena, please.
So, for example, for the reviewer, so you mentioned that the reporter didn't change material. So, what material of the right?
Well, okay.
You did mention that point. So, I wanted to ask you, what do you think? What would change if they did, and in what way you would
Well,
do
so
that?
obviously, it will change the young modulus, and therefore, from the formulas we can see in the presentation, it will change the velocity of the
The physical parameter of whatever is already in their model. So, I know that young modulus will influence on the results, but what else? If there is anything else that should be influenced by
Well,
the
it will
material?
also change the density of the material, and with this, there will also be effect of, effective mass, as was mentioned also in the presentation. The effective mass is important.
Okay, Phil, please.
This micro 3, do you consider the system to be an elastic system? When you're using Young's modulus, do you consider the system as a whole to be elastic, or each individual particle to be elastic? So yes or no would suffice.
Okay.
Either elastic or it's inelastic.
Or maybe yes, no, or partially.
I would say that the sticks are more towards the elastic side than the glue.
Okay.
She had sticks considered elastic, but I think considering chain elastic is with approximation.
Well, in order to use the Euler elastica theory, it must be assumed that it is a continuously elastic medium.
That's fine.
Okay, last
I
please.
have a quick question, like we start reviewer, opponent, reporter. One number I would like to say, percentage. What is the efficiency in terms of bending energy to height of the thing? Reviewer first.
Well, it could be around 60%.
Reporter? Opponent first.
I don't know, maybe more, like 80%.
Okay, we measured the conversion efficiency and we found it to be 2.5%, but previous study was found to be 5%.
Okay, Elena, please.
If I can. To the reporter, you mentioned that the changing the angle influences the horizontal velocity, right?
Yes.
Short question, we're out of time, so let it be short.
So you showed that it's symmetrical, and well, it's not like geometrically, it's not the same situation, right? So, for example, 60 angle and on the opposite side 120
okay.
is not.
That looks like a long discussion. We're already out of time, so let's stop with that. Thank you very much for the questions and the answers. Guys, for this little delay with the grading. Obviously, the jurors have a lot of opinions and a lot of things to consider when deciding on the grades, but now we are all ready. So I can announce the grades for report, opposition, and review. The grades will be in the same order as in the system, which means from the right-hand side towards left-hand side, if seen from that direction towards that. Okay, right. So my grade will be the first, and we start with the grades for the report. The grades for the report are as follows: 7, 8, 7, 7, and 6. Next, we have the grades for the opposition, which are as follows. They are 6, 5, 8, 5, and 6. And next, we have the grades for the review, which are as follows. They are 6, 7, 8, 7, and 6. Let's thank the jurors for this. Now we have time to look at the grades and discuss them quickly. This is not your coffee break. If we look at the grades for the report, we had one single lowest grade of 6 from Lars.
Yes, so first of all, I want to say congratulations. I think you did a very nice experiment. It was, I think, the best I've seen so far of the report. Like how you put emphasis on the experiment. What you get subtractions for in the end was not your report. Your report was very nice, very clarifying. I didn't like how you did it with the opponent. In some questions, you were entering a long answer and not trying to answer his questions in a short way, impeding that he can actually go on in his opposition. And then the answer to the jury, I subtracted a half point as well. So this gives altogether 6 points.
Okay. At the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Eva with the highest grade of 8 for the report. Could you just say a few words?
Yes, the report and the discussion with the opponent as compared to other yesterday, this test. So, and she was very convinced of the strategy and about his theory and experiments, so I like it very much.
Okay. If we move to the opposition, we had 2 lowest grades of 5 from Yelena and also from Eva. Elena probably would say.
Yeah, so the beginning was great, but actually I didn't really like how discussion was led, because I think that you jumped and was returning to some points and it wasn't really clear and coming to one conclusion together. However, I think that, well, I didn't think that you answered correctly for some questions also. So overall, it was, I think, for me, so...
Partial grades.
Sorry, you would like to hear partial grades?
Yes, partial.
Yeah, okay. So not considering this one that was already gave, 125, 125, 2, and minus 1.5. So that's 2.5, 3.5, 5.5.
Okay. At the opposite end of the spectrum, Phil gave the highest grade of 8 for the opposition.
Well, it's usually what goes with these things. If you've discovered the things that I've been asking questions about, every time you said a slide number, it's the one I had a question about. So you picked the things that had ticked the things for me, rather good than rather bad. So I thought the discussion actually went reasonably well, and it's the best discussion I've seen so far this year in terms of extraction and cooperation.
Okay, I think there is one more remark from Lars.
Well, I just want to say, yeah, I also like your opposing by itself. Why you ended up at 6? I rounded him up from 5.5 because your questions were sufficiently inefficient compared to the standard. And, well, as already has been said, he didn't answer very well to the jury question.
Okay, if we look at the grades for the review, the lowest grades were 2 grades of 6 from me and from Wolfram. So I can start commenting. I think that you had a nice review, but particular things that I think that you could have improved is that you immediately started discussing very specific questions about the model that the report was using. And so we had a lot of text on the slides discussing really tiny details. And I think that some of the details were not really important. And what you really liked were very clear conclusions, giving your assessment of the results and shortcomings and strong achievements of the report and opposition. So if you would have highlighted this and explained this more clearly, I think then that your review would be more understandable and more clear. Lars?
I have no name for it, review?
Yes, the lowest one.
Yeah, I compared to the opponent, for instance, your questions were very efficient. I like them. So you got between 1 and 1.5. Could be more, but I mean, I compared to the standard, I like them more. What I didn't like, it started very well with the review of the reporter, but then you didn't comment too much already on the opposition, and I think too little on the discussion, where you then highlight the relevant points of the discussion to put your opinion. So I think that agrees with what you have said.
Yes. So bringing your opinion would be really good.
And then, like, missed out points, you gave the floor, but, well, first of all, they hadn't considered it, and in the jury questions, you didn't show a deep understanding of this question that you raised in your presentation.
Okay, yeah. So, one more suggestion for me is that your review was descriptive, you were describing things, and probably it would be better, in my opinion, if it would be more critical, giving assessment of things. Okay? But at the opposite end of the spectrum, Phil gave a grade of 8 for the review, which was, again, the highest grade.
I thought it covered all the aspects of the fight. I had nothing to argue against, other than I really took it down and decided not to when you said, did you use other materials? Where, quite correct, it says wooden obstacles. There's not much variation there. It's not really wooden stick. A lot of people use wooden fibre would be a certain length and whatever. They seem to be fairly useful.
Okay, there is one more
Yeah,
remark.
just one more. So what I really loved about your review is that you tagged along the describing the presentation of the reporter and saying immediately what you would add or what they missed. It would be 8 if you just didn't did the correct time management, and then because you didn't have enough time for the discussion review. So that would be.
Okay.
If you had 1 minute more, it would be good.
Okay.
But you didn't.
Do we have any questions about any of the remaining grades? If not, then thank you very much for being with us in the series. And now we'll make a break for 10 minutes.
I was supposed to